He Newell walked through the empty corridors of New Hansong's main biodome. The lights were dim, showing it was early morning. Most of the colony's 500 people were still asleep. She liked these quiet moments when she could check on her plants without any interruptions. As the colony's lead agricultural specialist, He Newell was responsible for growing food for everyone. It was not an easy job. The planet's soil was different from Earth's, and many plants struggled to grow here. Every morning, she worried about finding dead plants or failing crops. Today was special. It was time to prepare for the spring planting. Even though they lived on a different planet, they still followed Earth's seasons in the biodomes. It helped people feel more at home. Newell stopped at her favorite section, where she grew flowers. They weren't just for looking pretty. They helped attract the special insects they had brought from Earth to help pollinate the food crops. She noticed frost on the inside of the dome's walls. The night had been colder than usual. Just one more cold night, she whispered to her plants. Spring is coming soon. She walked to the back of the biodome, where they were preparing new fields for planting. The soil here was fresh, brought in from the planet's surface, and treated to help Earth plants grow better. As she walked, her boots made soft crunching sounds on the frozen ground. That's when she saw something strange. There was a soft blue light coming from the soil. At first, she thought it was just frost reflecting the dome's lights. But this was different. The light seemed to come from underground. Newell knelt down and carefully brushed away the soil. Her fingers touched something smooth and cold. It wasn't ice or rock. It felt like metal, but it was warm despite the frost around it. She dug more carefully, using her small garden trowel. Soon she uncovered something that made her catch her breath. It was a disc, about as big as her hand. It had strange patterns on it that reminded her of the spring festivals her grandmother used to talk about back on Earth. The patterns showed flowers, eggs, and rabbits, symbols of Eostre, the ancient goddess of spring that some Earth people used to worship. But this wasn't from Earth. This disc was made of a metal she had never seen before, and it was giving off that strange blue light. As she held it, He Newell felt a sudden warmth spread through her hands. The frost on the ground around her feet began to melt in a perfect circle. She nearly dropped the disc in surprise when small green shoots started pushing up through the newly thawed soil. "This is impossible," she said softly. The plants couldn't grow this fast. She had worked with plants all her life, and nothing grew in minutes like this. She heard footsteps behind her and quickly put the disc in her pocket. G.A., her friend and the colony's plant researcher, walked up to her. "You're here early," G.A. said with a smile. Then she noticed the circle of melted frost and the tiny plants. Her eyes widened. "He Newell, what happened here?" He Newell looked at her friend. G.A. was good at keeping secrets, and He Newell knew she would need help to understand what she had found. "G.A., I need to show you something," He Newell said. "But first, promise me you won't tell anyone else yet. Not until we understand what it is." G.A. nodded slowly, her eyes serious. "I promise. What did you find?" He Newell reached into her pocket, feeling the warm disc. She knew that finding this strange object would change everything in her colony. She just didn't know how much. The sun began to rise outside the dome, sending rainbow patterns through the frosted walls. Spring was coming to New Hansong, but this year it would be very different from any spring they had seen before. G.A. stared at the disc in He Newell's hands, her eyes reflecting the soft blue light. The two women sat in G.A.'s small laboratory, where they had gone to examine the strange object in private. The morning sun now filled the biodome with warm light, but they barely noticed it. "I've never seen anything like this," G.A. said softly. She held up a scanner to the disc. "The metal isn't in any of our databases. It's not from Earth, and it's not like anything else we found on this planet." Newell watched as her friend worked. G.A. was the smartest person she knew when it came to studying plants and new discoveries. The laboratory was filled with careful notes and detailed drawings of every plant species in the colony. "Look at these patterns," G.A. continued, tracing the designs with her finger, but not touching the surface. They're like old Earth symbols, but they're made with a precision our ancestors couldn't have achieved. And see how they seem to move when you look at them from different angles. Newell nodded. The rabbit patterns on the disc seemed to hop slightly when the light hit them in certain ways. The carved flowers appeared to sway as if in a gentle breeze. Suddenly, all the plants in Jai's laboratory began to grow. The small testing pots on her shelves filled with new sprouts. The experimental garden in the corner burst into bloom. Even the dried samples in their storage containers began to show signs of life. "This is amazing," Jai whispered, quickly grabbing her tablet to record everything. "The plants are growing 10 times faster than normal. But they're not just growing. They're healthy. Perfect, even. No signs of stress or mutation." Newell walked to the corner where her friend kept the most difficult plants, the ones that had never adapted well to their new world. These plants had always died, no matter what they tried. Now they were growing strong and tall. "Hey," Newell said, pointing to her readings. "Look at their brainwave patterns." The tablet showed strange readings from the small sensors they wore as part of their colony uniforms. The patterns matched the glowing designs on the disc perfectly. "The plants are connecting to our minds," Jai said with excitement. "It's like they're reading our thoughts, our memories of Earth's springtime. They're growing the way we remember them growing back home." A knock at the laboratory door made them both jump. Newell quickly put the disc back in her pocket. The door opened, and Du Haiyan, the colony administrator, stepped in. "Good morning," he said, looking tired. "I hoped I'd find you both here. Did either of you sleep well last night?" They shook their heads. Du Haiyan ran his hand through his gray hair. "Neither did I," he said. "I had the strangest dreams. I saw Earth's spring, but I've never even been to Earth. I was born here in the colony. And now," he looked around the laboratory with wide eyes, noticing all the blooming plants. "What's happening here?" Newell and Ga looked at each other. They could feel the disc growing warmer in Newell's pocket. The plants around them continued to grow, their leaves reaching toward the 3 humans, as if trying to tell them something. "Sir," Newell said carefully, "we have something important to show you. But first, you need to understand that what we found might change everything we know about this planet." Outside the laboratory windows, more colonists were walking through the biodome, stopping to stare at their own gardens that had mysteriously bloomed overnight. The last frost was gone, and a new spring was beginning, one unlike anything they had seen before. Du Haiyan sat in his office, looking out at the changed biodome through his large window. The morning sun made the plants sparkle with tiny drops of water. Everything was so green now, greener than he had ever seen in his life. He thought about his dreams from the night before. In them, he had walked through Earth's gardens during springtime. He had seen cherry blossoms falling like pink snow and smelled flowers he had never encountered in real life. How could he dream about a place he had never visited? Newell and Ga sat across from his desk, watching him carefully. The strange disc lay between them, its blue light softer in the daylight. "So this device is connecting with our dreams?" Du Haiyan asked, trying to understand. "And it's using our memories to help the plants grow." "Not just our memories," Jai explained. She opened her tablet to show him the data. "It's connecting with something deeper. Even people like you, who have never been to Earth, are sharing in these dreams. It's like the device is reaching into our shared memory, our ancestors' memories of spring." Newell pointed to the readings on the screen. "Look at the growth rates in all the biodomes. Plants that never grew well here are now thriving. The device isn't just making them grow faster, it's helping them adapt to our world." Du Haiyan stood up and walked to his window. More colonists were gathering in the biodome, touching the new plants with wonder on their faces. Children ran between the garden beds, pointing at flowers they had never seen before. "I should be worried," he said quietly. "This device isn't human technology. We don't know where it came from or what it might do. But he turned back to them. But when I look at all this life, all I feel is hope. Suddenly, his computer screen lit up with messages. Reports were coming in from all over the colony. The night shift workers were having trouble staying awake. The day shift workers couldn't stop yawning. Everyone was talking about their dreams. "There's more," Hey Newell said, standing up. "Watch this." She picked up the disc, and all the plants in Du Haiyan's office began to move. They didn't just grow. They turned toward the three humans like they were listening. "The plants are responding to us," Jia explained. "To our thoughts, our feelings. It's like they want to communicate." Du Haiyan touched a leaf of his office plant, a small tree that had never grown well before. Now it was tall and strong, its leaves a deep, healthy green. As he touched it, he felt a wave of calm wash over him. "We need to study this carefully," he said. "But we also need to keep it quiet for now. If word gets out to the other colonies." He didn't finish his sentence. They all knew how valuable this discovery could be. A soft chime sounded through the colony speakers, the signal for the afternoon work shift to begin. But instead of the usual movement of people heading to their jobs, they saw colonists finding quiet corners to rest. One by one, people were falling asleep, drawn into the shared dreams of spring. "It's getting stronger," Hey Newell said, feeling her own eyes grow heavy. The disc in her hands pulsed with a gentle light, like a heartbeat. Through the window, they watched as new flowers bloomed across the biodome, their colors brighter than anything they had seen before. The colony was changing, becoming something new. And in their dreams, they would discover what that meant. Tadawan walked through the quiet corridors of the colony's living quarters. As the head of security, he always took the night shift seriously. Tonight was different. The usual silence felt strange, almost alive with energy. His footsteps echoed as he passed the children's section. He stopped. Something wasn't right. The doors to several rooms stood open, but no alarms had gone off. He looked inside one room and found an empty bed. "Control room," he spoke into his communication device. "Are you seeing any movement in the corridors?" The response came back with static. "Sir, you need to see this. The cameras show." "Well, it's easier if you look yourself." Taiwan hurried to the security control room. The screen showed groups of children walking slowly through the corridors. Their eyes were closed, but they moved with purpose. They were all heading toward the biodomes. "How long has this been happening?" he asked the night shift operator. "About an hour, sir. They're not responding to any voices, but they don't seem to be in danger. They're just walking." Taiwan remembered the report about the strange device Newell had found. He had thought the administrator was being too careful about it, but now he understood. He called Du Haiyan. The administrator answered quickly, sounding wide awake despite the late hour. "You're seeing it too?" Du Haiyan asked before Taiwan could speak. "Yes, sir. The children are sleepwalking to the biodomes. Should we stop them?" "No," Du Haiyan said firmly. "Watch them, keep them safe, but don't interfere." Hey Newell and GA are already there. They think something important is about to happen. Taiwan took a team of security officers to the main biodome. When they entered, they stopped in amazement. The children had arranged themselves in a circle in the center of the garden. The plants around them were growing and moving, forming patterns that looked like the ones on the ancient device. Newell and GA stood quietly at the edge of the circle, taking readings with their tablets. The device floated in the air above the children, its blue light filling the dome with a soft glow. "Look at the patterns," Jia whispered to Taiwan as he approached. "They match old Earth ceremonies for the spring equinox. The children are recreating something that happened thousands of years ago." The plants continued to grow, forming spirals and circles that reminded Taiwan of pictures he had seen of ancient stone circles on Earth. The children moved in their sleep, their hands reaching out to touch the plants. Wherever they touched, new flowers bloomed. "It's beautiful," one of his security officers said softly. But should we be worried? Before Taiwan could answer, the device pulsed with light. The children began to hum a melody that none of them had ever heard before. The plants swayed in time with their song. "They're communicating," Haynul said, checking her readings. "The device is translating between the children and the plants. It's teaching them both how to live here, how to make this world their home." Taiwan watched as small lights began to rise from the plants, like fireflies made of starlight. They danced around the children, creating patterns in the air that matched the ones on the ground. "Should we wake them?" he asked. Jie shook her head. "No, this is part of something bigger. The device is showing us how the first settlers on Earth learned to grow food, how they celebrated the return of spring. Our children are learning what our ancestors knew, that we're connected to every living thing around us." As the night continued, more colonists gathered to watch. The children kept dancing in their sleep, and the plants kept growing. Together, they were writing a new story for their world, one that mixed Earth's oldest memories with the dreams of humanity's future among the stars. Su Min sat in her small bedroom, watching the strange lights dance outside her window. She was 12 years old, and everyone in the colony knew she was different. She could always tell how people were feeling, even when they tried to hide it. Now she could feel something new, the thoughts of the plants themselves. The ancient device that Haynul had found sat on a special table in the main biodome. But Su Min could feel its presence even through the colony's thick walls. It called to her, like a soft song she had always known but never heard before. Haynul and Ji-Ad came to visit her that morning. They had noticed that she was the only child who hadn't joined the midnight garden dance. Instead, she had watched from her window, understanding everything that happened. "You can feel it too, can't you?" Haynul asked gently, sitting beside Su Min's bed. "The way the device speaks." Su Min nodded. "It's telling us a story," she said quietly. "A very old story about people who traveled among the stars long before us. They loved growing things, just like we do. They left these devices on many worlds, waiting for others who would understand." Jie took notes on her tablet as Su Min spoke. The young girl's words matched patterns they had begun to see in their research. The device wasn't just a tool. It was a message from an ancient people who had mastered the art of growing life on new worlds. "Can you tell us more about these people?" Jie asked. Su Min closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw images of beautiful gardens floating in space, of worlds transformed from bare rock into paradise. They didn't look like us, but they loved beauty just as we do. They believed that all living things share the same dreams. Dreams of growing, of changing, of making things better. As she spoke, the plants in her room began to move. The small flowers on her windowsill turned toward her, and new buds opened as if they were listening too. The device's blue light could be seen shining through the colony's windows, reaching out to her. They left the devices to sleep until they found people who could understand them. Su Min continued. People who would use them with love and care. The devices remember everything about growing things on every world they visited. They want to share this knowledge with us. Du Haiyan joined them, bringing news from the other biodomes. "The changes are spreading," he said, "not just in the gardens, but outside the colony too. The soil is changing. The air is different. It's like the whole planet is waking up." Su Min smiled. "That's what's supposed to happen. The device isn't just for our gardens. It's for the whole world. But it needed us, our dreams, our love for growing things. It needed children who could learn its language." She stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the landscape was already changing. Green patches had appeared in the once barren soil. The device's light pulsed in time with her heartbeat, and she could feel the dreams of every plant and person in the colony. "We're all connected now," she said. "The dreams of Earth, the wisdom of the ancient gardeners, and our own hopes for this new world. The device is helping us weave them all together into something new and beautiful." Haynul, Ji, and Du Hyun watched as Su-min placed her hand on the window. Where her fingers touched the glass, frost patterns formed, then melted into the shapes of leaves and flowers. The girl who could feel everyone's emotions was now becoming a bridge between past and future, between humanity and their new home among the stars. The colony's sleep patterns had changed completely over the past few days. People fell asleep at the same time each night, sharing the same beautiful dreams of spring. During the day, they worked with new energy, watching their world transform around them. Du Hyun stood in his office, reviewing reports from the science team. The device was activating something hidden deep in the planet's soil. Ancient seeds, sleeping for thousands of years, were beginning to wake up. The previous gardeners had prepared this world long ago, leaving their knowledge buried in the ground. Newell entered his office, followed by Jie and Su-min. The young girl had become their guide in understanding the device's messages. She looked tired but happy, her eyes bright with the knowledge she had gained in her dreams. "It's time," Su-min said simply. "The device wants to show us something important. Everyone in the colony needs to be part of it." Du Hyun looked at his screen, where messages from Earth's Central Command waited for answers. They wanted to know why communications from New Hansong had become irregular. They were asking about changes in the colony's atmospheric readings. "If we let this continue," he said carefully, "we won't be able to hide it anymore. Earth will know something has happened here." "They'll understand when they see," Su-min replied. "The ancient gardeners left devices on Earth too. They're just sleeping deeper there, waiting for the right time." Mule stepped forward. "Sir, the changes are good ones. Our crops are healthier than ever. The air is getting cleaner. Even the soil outside the domes is turning fertile. We should trust what's happening." Du Hyun looked out his window. The colony had never looked more beautiful. Gardens bloomed everywhere, and the people moved with a grace they hadn't had before, as if they were dancing to music only they could hear. "What do we need to do?" he asked. That evening, the entire colony gathered in the main biodome. The device floated in the center, its blue light touching everyone. Su-min stood beneath it, her small hand raised toward its glow. The ancient gardeners learned that the best way to help life grow was to dance with it, she explained to everyone. They didn't just plant seeds, they moved with the rhythm of growing things. Tonight, they want to teach us their dance. The device's light grew stronger, and soft music seemed to come from the air itself. It wasn't made of sounds exactly, but everyone could feel it in their hearts. The plants began to sway, and without thinking, the colonists moved with them. Old and young, scientists and farmers, everyone danced together. Their movements matched the patterns that had been carved on the device thousands of years ago. As they danced, they shared the same dreams, seen through time to when the ancient gardeners had danced on countless worlds, bringing life to the stars. Outside the dome's clear walls, the landscape was changing faster now. Green patterns spread across the ground like ripples in a pond. The planet itself seemed to be dancing with them, awakening from its long sleep to join in the celebration of spring. Du Hyun found himself dancing too, understanding at last that this was what their colony had been meant for all along. They weren't just here to survive on this new world. They were here to help it become what it was always meant to be, a garden among the stars. The morning of the planet's equinox arrived with extraordinary beauty. The twin suns of New Hansong rose together, casting golden light across the transformed landscape. Inside the colony, everyone prepared for what Su-min had told them would be the most important day in their world's new history. Newell and Ga worked in the main biodome, checking the readings on their instruments. The device's blue light had spread throughout the colony overnight, touching every plant, every person, every particle of soil. The air sparkled with tiny points of light that danced like morning dew. "The ancient patterns are appearing everywhere now," Jia said, showing Newell her tablet. The ground outside the colony displayed enormous designs that could only be seen from above. Spirals and circles spread across the landscape, formed by lines of newly growing plants. Su-min walked through the colony's corridors, touching the walls gently. Where her fingers passed, crystalline patterns formed and bloomed into impossible flowers. Other children followed her, their dreams from the previous night still visible in their bright eyes. The ancient gardeners are ready to share their greatest gift, Su-min explained to Du Hyun and the colony's leadership. They want to show us how they transformed whole worlds. But everyone needs to participate. Everyone needs to dream together. The device rose higher in the main biodome, its light growing stronger. As the colony's people gathered beneath it, they felt a gentle warmth in their minds, like the touch of spring sunlight. The dreams began while they were still awake. They saw the ancient gardeners, tall beings of light and color, dancing among the stars. They watched as barren worlds turned into gardens, as life spread from planet to planet. They understood that the universe itself was like a garden, and every living thing was connected through dreams and memory. "Now we dream together," Su-min said softly, her voice carrying to everyone. "We dream of our new home, of what it can become." The colonists joined hands, forming circles like the patterns on the ground. The plants moved with them, reaching up toward the device's light. Even the colony's walls seemed to breathe and pulse with new life. As they dreamed together, the transformation began. The device's light spread outward from the colony in great waves. Where it touched, the planet's ancient seeds awakened. Forests rose from empty plains. Flowers bloomed across mountains that had never known life. Rivers formed in dry valleys, their waters clean and sweet. Hanul watched through tears of joy as her lifetime of work with plants found its true purpose. Ga recorded everything, knowing that one day other colonies would need to understand what had happened here. Du Hyun sent a final message to Earth, inviting them to witness the miracle taking place on their distant world. The device pulsed with power, and for a moment, everyone could see through time. They saw their world as it had been ages ago, when the ancient gardeners first seeded it with life. They saw it sleeping through the long years, waiting for new gardeners to arrive. And they saw its future, a paradise of green forests and clear waters, a jewel among the stars. Su-min stood in the center of it all, her arms raised to the device's light. Through her, the dreams of the ancient gardeners merged with the hopes of the colonists. Together, they were writing a new chapter in the story of life among the stars, a story that had begun long ago with the first spring on the first garden world. 1 year had passed since the great transformation of New Hansong. The colony had changed beyond recognition. Gardens flourished everywhere, their plants growing in harmony with the native species that had awakened from their ancient sleep. The air was sweet with the scent of flowers that hadn't bloomed for thousands of years. The device had found its permanent home in a special garden at the colony center. It no longer needed to float or glow brightly. Instead, it rested on a simple stone pedestal, its patterns now matched by similar designs that grew naturally in the gardens around it. Hanul walked through these gardens early one morning, just as she had done that fateful day a year ago. But now she wasn't alone. A group of children followed her, eager for their daily lesson in what they called dream growing. "Remember what Su-min taught us," Hanul said to the children. "The plants share our dreams. When we care for them, we're caring for the dreams of everyone who came before us, and everyone who will come after." Su-min herself had grown taller over the past year. She still spent time with the device, learning its ancient secrets, but now she also taught others. Young colonists from other worlds came to learn from her, preparing to awaken the sleeping gardens on their own planets. Ga had transformed her laboratory into a school where people could learn about the union of Earth's farming traditions with the wisdom of the ancient gardeners. Her careful notes had become books that were read throughout human space. Other colonies had begun to find their own sleeping devices, hidden and waiting just as theirs had been. Du Hyun stood at his office window, but now the window opened directly to the fresh air. The protective domes were no longer needed. The planet's atmosphere had transformed into something pure and life-giving. He smiled as he watched ships landing at the spaceport, bringing visitors from Earth and other colonies who wanted to see the miracle of New Hansong for themselves. "We're ready for the morning ceremony," Taiwan said, entering the office. The security officer's job had changed too. Now he helped coordinate the growing number of visitors who came to learn from their colony's experience. Each morning, the colonists gathered in the central garden to greet the twin suns. Together, they would share a moment of the peaceful dreams that had changed their world. The device had taught them that dreams were not just for sleeping. They were a way to connect with all living things. The ancient gardeners would be proud, Jie said, joining Hainul in the garden. "We're not just growing plants anymore. We're growing new ways of living, new ways of dreaming." Children played among the flowers, their laughter mixing with the songs of colorful birds that had emerged from long dormant eggs. The kids no longer needed to sleepwalk to connect with the garden's magic. They had learned to carry its dreams in their hearts while awake. As the suns rose higher, their light caught the device's patterns, sending ribbons of color across the garden. But now these colors were matched by the natural beauty of the world around them. The ancient gardener's gift had become part of their daily life, as natural as breathing. Hanul touched a flower, feeling its gentle dreams merge with her own. The story of New Hansong's spring would continue, growing and changing like the gardens themselves. Through the device, they had learned that every spring was magical, every dream was precious, and every living thing was part of an endless dance of renewal and hope.